Hey everyone, I'm Craig, and today I'm going to be showing you something that I've run into while I've been recording another video. So in my other video, I'm trying to set myself up a storage server, and in order to do that, I've done some stuff, and bottom line is I need to update the firmware. And I thought it'd actually be a really good idea just to show you how that happens. Now, I'm doing this all off a Fedora 30 box, primarily so that I can fly the open source flag and say, hey, look at this open source stuff. It's quite good, actually. Um, I have run into some issues as it happens, and I'll just quickly show you what they are. So first thing I'm going to do is log in to my box here. Hopefully I can read. No, apparently I can't read. There we go. Yeah, so I'll show you what I've run into here. So I ended up having to upgrade the ILO firmware because SSL certs and all that kind of good stuff. And luckily, once you update the ILO firmware on these things, it gives you a nice new integrated console option of HTML5. Anybody who is doing this and tries to use the Java Web Start, I haven't had very much or wants to use it or normally uses it. So I haven't had very much luck with this Java Web Start option on Fedora. It works great on Mac, it works great on Windows, just haven't had any luck with it here. So what I'm going to do now is just jump quickly into my files here. And this is the Java Web Start file that's been downloaded. Now I've already got Java and WebICT, Maduda, Web Start thingamabob installed. So I'm going to use that to kick off the console. So on the face of it, everything looks great, right? Because you've got the applet popping up, you've got the console window popping up, you've even got this good old downloading the jar thing pop up in the corner. But the problem is it doesn't change from this. It doesn't go anywhere. It just doesn't seem to work. There's not really a lot in terms of options either. I mean, we get this, which is probably symptomatic of what we're seeing. It's probably trying to do something and not getting on with Wayland or something like that. But yeah, I thought I'd show you that it doesn't work, and trying to drop out of these application windows that it's spawned doesn't really work either. So what you end up having to do is go in, kill all Java, and it goes away. Great. Luckily for us though, HP have actually trucked in this HTML5 console, and it seems to actually work pretty well. You can see I've already started kind of having a little bit of a play with this already. But what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go ahead and mount the ISO file that we've got for the service pack. So this is a Proliant service pack. I've never used one of these before. This is the very first time that I'm actually having a play and a look, so we'll see what happens with this. But what I understand to happen is this is going to give us an opportunity here to upgrade the firmware, and maybe I'll show you why I'm doing that. So if I go through and we do a cold boot, and that what this is going to do is it's going to allow us to go back through BIOS, and it's going to allow us to go through the thing that I really want to fix, which is the storage controller. So I've got a P420 storage controller in this box, and it's there to control all my disks. It's a 25 bay DL380, lovely bit of kit. But I know that from some of the later versions of the DL360s that I've got downstairs in the rack, the newer version of this firmware is actually quite nice. It gives you one option in particular that I really appreciate. So in my other video, what I'm kind of doing is talking about how to configure the disks, and because we have to configure disks into RAID 0 arrays per disk in order to deal with not having just a bunch of disks, a JBOD configuration option with this card. In the older firmware, and I'm about to show you this if it all goes well, in the older cards, there's no option to just click, I want to set these disks to be RAID 0s, please. go and do them all. But I know that in the newer version of the firmware, it gives us the opportunity to do that. So that's why I'm upgrading. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're about to get a commands option thingamabob pop up here where I need to mash F5. So hopefully I do this. And here it comes. There's our storage controller. There's F5. Excellent. So we got into F5. Now what this is going to do is it's going to start in starting up basically a really lightweight Linux distribution that allows the controller to be managed. It's quite a nice way of working. I kind of like this. It seems to be based on Firefox. I've seen things where pages don't load quite correctly. Nothing hugely bad or anything like that. But yeah, it seems to be quite a nice little bit of kit. So we'll just wait for this to load. Okay, great, we're loaded. So this is the HP Intelligent Provisioning thingamabob, and it's loaded this nice array configuration utility. So, and I love this with the mouse here. This is great. It doesn't make it difficult at all. Anyway, so what it means for us is if I go into this smart array controller we've got here, and you can see that we've got a ton of unassigned disks. So this is what I was doing in my other video. I was clearing out the configuration, applying a new bunch of configuration and seeing where we went from there. But as you can see, if I want to take these unassigned drives here and I want to create an array, it'll do all of them in a single array, but not all of them in their own arrays. And so in the new version of the firmware, there's an ability to be able to, there's a button that's literally click me and I'll put them all into RAID zeros. And that's what I want them to do. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to mount that service pack here. And we're going to go through the the firmware update process. Now, as I say, I've never done this before, so it could all go totally Pete Tong. I hope not, but let's find out. So, done a hard reset, a power reset here on the box, and the next thing that I'm expecting to do once it gets through post is to mount it. Okay, great. So it's finally mounted the ISO, and we're gonna boot from the CD-ROM. Now the booting from the CD-ROM in the HTML5 client hasn't worked great for me in the past, so fingers crossed this works. Seems to, yes, excellent, great. So we're going to be selecting here the interactive firmware update version. The reason why I've selected interactive is actually I want to see what the configurable options are. I want to see what I can actually do with this thing. You never know, there might be an option for JBOD. Who knows? We'll find out. Haha, excellent. Let's try that again. Need to load. I think the disk may not be working so good. Oh, okay. It's because it's disconnected the CD-ROM for some reason. How did I miss this if it seems to pop this up? Okay, so there's problem number one. It randomly spat the disk out. No, okay, this isn't going to have it. Okay, so what I'm going to do here then is I'm going to switch over to my Windows machine and see if we can get it going from there. Okay, so what I've had to do here is install Java onto this Windows box. This Windows box is actually the box that I'm doing the recording from, so I'm having to fiddle with stuff a little bit, and this is annoyingly the second time I'm recording this because I forgot to enable my mic, which was not very good. So what we're looking for now is this Java Web Start option. So if I go ahead and hit this, it's going to ask us to download the JNLP. I can hit that. Java starts loading. It's now giving us the security warnings to warn us about the cert being self-signed. There were a couple at the first launch. There's a couple of other security warnings that pop up for this as well. Because I've already gone in and just tested to make sure it's going to work and do what I want it to do, I've already accepted those. But ordinarily, you'd actually get a couple of prompts there. They're perfectly fine to ignore and accept, as long as you trust your network, you trust the hardware that you're connecting to. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and select this HP Service Pack disk. I'm just going to go and load that, and then I'm going to power the server on. Am I sure I want to press the power button? Yes, I am. What this is going to do now is it's going to go ahead and boot up the server, and I'm just going to skip this. Okay, so now we're getting to the good bit. We've just loaded, we're just booting up from this Foam Service Pack CD. Now, as I mentioned earlier in the video, I've never used one of these before. It's genuinely my first time running through this disk, so I'm not really sure what to expect. I've gone for the interactive install purely because I want to see what I can configure. This box isn't particularly, it's not a production server, so I don't have to worry about breaking anything or anything like that. It's sure it'll be a little bit of a kick in the teeth if I've got to go and fix stuff if I brick it or something like that, but actually it's a good opportunity for me to explore. Hey, there we go. Again, it's looking like a smaller Linux distro in the background. I know there's some kind of command line that you can drop into to do some form of configuration. Maybe the a la carte stuff. Hey, and we're loaded. Excellent. So that was relatively painless. And already I can see the cursor experience on the Java Web Start version of this is a lot better than the HTML5 one. I don't know if that's just because it's a newer version of whatever Linux distro that they're using for this, and has whatever cursor support, but it's already a much nicer experience. I'm going to not read the EULA because who usually does? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to opt here to go through the firmware update. Normally I take the approach of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But because I'm going to be running some virtualization on these boxes, I'm kind of curious whether some of the, or a particular performance issue that I've been seeing is going to be helped by this. It's probably not. It's probably nothing to do with it. But it doesn't hurt to have a look. I'm also curious about what the newer version of the firmware brings, and see if it increases compatibility with any software or anything like that that I'm going to be running. Again, probably not. Okay, so this seems to be gathering some kind of inventory baseline. Not really sure what that means, so let's have that. Okay. Okay, so I see. It's gone through and it's actually, I didn't need to click anything there. It's gone through and it's scanning the box for me to see what's there, what it looks like, what configuration there is, all that kind of stuff. And it must be doing some kind of comparison based on what is provided in the service pack. So it knows firmware options and all that kind of jazz to update. It's pretty clever. Okay, so I have no idea how long this is going to take, so I'm going to skip to the good bit. Okay, so we can see here that actually it's analysing what versions of firmware and what things you've got plugged into it to see what it needs to update. So that's pretty cool. Okay, great. So it's finished the inventory here. It seems to have gone through and had a look at all the different components that are available in the system. Had a look at what's available in the service pack. And now it's recommending that there's some updates that are required, so we can move on to the next step. And okay, this is cool. So it's given us the option here to choose different, all of the different updates that are available. One of those is ILO. So the ILO version that I'm running on here is already 2.70, but I think this is a minor update to that. So I'm actually going to go ahead and do I want to? No, okay, so it's the same version, so I'm not going to bother with that. We'll leave it as is. And we can see actually what the update that I was actually interested in is this smart array update, which gives us the update for the storage controller that I'm running. So that's great. That's exactly what I wanted to see here. So if I go ahead and hit deploy, selected firmware baseline is not supported for the given server. So why does it say? Why is it telling me that? So it's doing a massive version jump here from 4.68 to 8.32. So it's recommending here that I change the baseline, but actually I don't know how to change the baseline. Maybe it's under advanced options here. Okay, no, so this is just for reinstalls, and if I want to downgrade or something like that, I don't, so I'm not going to bother. So I think all I'm going to do here is, because there's nothing that doesn't seem that sensible, I'm just going to hit ignore warnings, and I'm going to force it to deploy anyway. And we'll see what happens. As I said, it's not a production server, so it's a good opportunity to see what's going to happen. Okay, so deployment seems to have been successful. It's happened. It was quite easy actually, fairly quick. So let's reboot. That seems to be the logical next step. Okay, so we're getting to the good bit again. I totally didn't mess it up the first time around and not press F5. I'm mashing it. I swear I'm mashing it. So hopefully it's going to load. We can see that it's loaded the correct version of the firmware anyway. It's loaded up 8.32, which is what we've just flashed it with. There we go. Perfect. Finally did it. Okay, so let's see where we can get from here. Okay, great. So we're in the new version of the array configuration utility, and it's already starting to look a bit nicer. Well, at least that we can see. So I actually don't think that the configuration utility's been updated. So I'll tell you what, let's go ahead and put the service pack back in, and we'll do a reboot, because the service pack itself looked like it had a smart array configuration utility. So let's drop into that and see what happens. Okay, so I'm going to be selecting interactive mode again. All I can imagine is that we've only updated the firmware on the controller itself and not actually the configuration utility. Kind of makes sense. I expected that to have updated too, but as I say, I've never run one of these before, so I'm probably doing something stupid. Let's see. Okay, great. So this is the service pack again. So in theory, if we, instead of going into the firmware update option, if we move over to the smart storage administrator, hopefully this should get us a nicer interface with the new option. Yeah, this is the one. This is okay. So this is what I was expecting to have seen. So immediately we can see it just looks better. Can even go in, and there we go. There's our option. So just by going into the smart array controller, I went a bit of a weird way about it, but you can, there's already a button here, just create arrays with RAID 0, and all it'll do is you select which disks you want. So I want these ones, and I'm going to want all of these ones too, and hit OK, and yes. And brilliant, it's just gone and created a bunch of RAID 0 arrays, all with default settings, all configured exactly the same. And the amount of clicking around that saves is huge. There's nothing more frustrating than going through this, having to click, I want a new array for this device and this logical volume, and then this device and then this logical volume. This does all of that for configuration for you. It makes it so much easier. As I say, I've got this tool on one of the DL360s I've got, so there must be a way of upgrading the configuration or the firmware somehow to use the newer versions. So I'll continue to have a look and see what I can find. But for the time being, this appears to have been successful. It seems to have done exactly what I wanted it to. Does seem to be hanging about a bit, maybe not quite as fast as I would have liked, but hey, you can't have everything. It's a lot faster. There we go. It's a lot faster than the other option. So I'm just go through, review this, hit finish. And away we go. Done. Excellent. So you'll notice there's an awful lot of warning drives here. So I've put aftermarket drives in. I've actually filled this box up with 20 WD Blue SSDs and 5 WD Black 5 terabyte discs, something like that. They're also not in HP trays or Gen 8 HP trays. Are in Gen 1 through 7 trays, I think they are. But it doesn't really matter too much. They're a bit weird to get in and out. It really doesn't bother me for what I need them for. As I said, it's not production, not an enterprise. I just want stuff to work. It's a lab after all. Anyway, hopefully that has been useful to you. Hopefully you've been able to see how this works. Maybe you were curious. I certainly was. I've never used one of these service packs before. So anyway, thank you very much. See you later.